Welcome to r/Best of Redditor updates, where OP and her husband are white, and they give birth to a black baby.
So imagine you pay to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, and when the waitress comes to your table, she tells you, "By the way, you're not allowed to eat any of our meat products." And then after eating, you head over to the gym and they say, "Welcome to the gym, but you're only allowed to use the treadmill. The weights, the basketball court, and every other part of the gym is off limits to you, even though you paid for a full gym membership." So that's basically what it's like to use a streaming service when you're not behind a VPN. Netflix, Hulu, Crunchyroll, Amazon, even YouTube all has content that you can't see based on your location. And if you ask me, that's total BS because you're paying for the service. If I'm paying for a Netflix subscription, then I should be able to see the entire Netflix library. But that's just not how it works. So if you want to see the entire library on Netflix or YouTube or whatever, then you need a VPN. ExpressVPN allows you to manually set your location, so you can trick streaming services into thinking that you're watching from another country. Are you a big anime fan? Then just use ExpressVPN to set your location to Japan. You can unlock tons of extra content like Studio Ghibli films. If you want to try out ExpressVPN, you can get 3 months free by going to expressvpn.com/r/.
Our next Reddit post is from r/relationships. Me and my significant other just had our first baby. We were over the moon when we discovered the pregnancy, and we were both really excited to have a child together. We wanted to get married next year, and everything was going great. We were happy. We both look very white, pale skin, blue eyes, brown and blonde hair. However, my great-great-grandpa was black, and some of his features have popped up here and there in our family, like kinky hair, darker skin, and more black-looking facial characteristics. My significant other knows this, and has seen some of my aunts, uncles, and cousins who have these features. I, however, don't have any myself, and neither does my mom. Our daughter was born 5 days ago, and I guess she just got all the dormant genes in me because she's really dark-skinned compared to us, with really curly hair. I think she's adorable, but my significant other flipped. He accused me of cheating, that the baby couldn't possibly be his. I've never given him a reason to suspect me of infidelity, and I've certainly never cheated. We argued about it. I pointed at all my cousins and other relatives who have black features, but he absolutely refused to listen. Said that our daughter looked too black for that to be a plausible explanation. He stormed out of the hospital, sent me a text an hour later that me and him were over, and when I got home from the hospital the next day, he wasn't there, and most of his personal belongings were gone. I tried to reach him, but he didn't answer my calls or texts until 3 days later, when he told me he demanded a paternity test to prove that I was a liar, and if I refuse, I'll never see him again. I'm completely broken down and hurt over this. Our entire relationship, he's been so sweet and rational. This is completely unlike him. If he had just calmly asked for a paternity test to begin with, I would have been hurt, but I guess I could understand the concerns. Our daughter looks nothing like him, but I don't think our relationship can survive this, even when I proved to him I wasn't lying. Should I go through with the test or just cut my losses here and raise her alone? Then, 5 days later, OP posted an update. Well, the results are in, and of course, she's his baby. The whole process was absolutely ridiculous. I got an appointment with the doctor and texted my significant other the time and location. He didn't answer, but he showed up. And the entire time, he didn't say one word to me. And he didn't want to touch or even look at the baby. And he left as soon as they had taken the sample, despite the doctor asking him to stay so that we could go over a few things. Once he left, I just broke down. And I must say, the doctor was really nice. Didn't judge me or accuse me of anything. Just calmly went over how the test works and told me babies are often born darker than they actually end up being. The baby was an absolute champ. Barely fussed when they drew her blood. I got the results yesterday. I texted my significant other the news and asked if he wanted to come over and open it with me. After almost half an hour, he finally responded, yes, he'd like to come over. Well, we opened it and read the positive test together. He turned white as a sheet and then just started bawling. I had to shush him because he was crying so loudly. And finally, I got an explanation for his flip out. I mentioned in a comment on the old post that he was an only child to very old parents. His dad died a few years ago, and his mom lives alone a few hours' drive from us. I haven't met her often, but she seemed pleasant enough. Turns out she hates me. Absolutely hates my guts and always has. I had no idea about this. She always acted kinda snobby, sure, but I had no idea she disliked me this much. When my significant other called her to tell her the good news 8 months back when we discovered the pregnancy, she started crying. He never told me this. And as the months passed, she continued being super negative about the whole thing and saying she doubted the baby was actually his, that I was below them, that poor people cheat because they're raised in a messed up environment. And instead of talking to me about this, my significant other kept silent while constantly doubting me more and more. The baby being black just put the final nail in the coffin that his mother was right and that I was a good-for-nothing, cheating B-word. After telling me all this, we just sat in silence for a while. Finally, he asked if he could hold the baby. I was still angry as hell, but decided that holding her was his right. He's her father after all. I went and got her from her crib, let him have her, and he started crying again, which scared her and she started crying too. So they were just sitting there, bawling together for a while. Finally, he stopped, handed her back, and asked if he could come home. I was kinda taken aback. I didn't expect him to just flat out ask that already. I laid out everything I said in the last thread. How insanely disrespectful and childish he'd been. How he'd horribly broken my trust. Hadn't talked to me about his mom's poisonous and ignorant comments. Completely ignored me for 3 days, not telling me where he was or if he was even alive. And then he just waltzes in and wants to start living here again? I told him that if he ever wanted to have some inkling of a chance of mending the relationship, we had to go to couples therapy ASAP. From now on, he would answer my calls and messages unless there's an emergency. He will not be staying here for a while. And finally, he needs to tell his mom to back the F off. She will not be seeing the baby until she apologizes to me in person. He immediately agreed and finally told me how sorry he was for this whole fiasco. I'm not sure if I can forgive him for this, but I'm gonna try. We had an amazing life before this, and I hope that with a lot of work, we can have it again. My significant other also finally told me that he was staying in a hostel, but it's not very expensive, so he can stay there for a while longer. Well, I'd like to think that they worked out, but considering all the red flags the dude displayed in this story, I'm guessing they broke up shortly after this post. Our next Reddit post is from r/relationships. I'm a 35-year-old woman, and my 36-year-old husband is burned out and can't work his normally high-paying field. I'm resenting having to go back to work to support us. To sum up, my husband and I have been married 10 years. We have a good marriage and have never really faced any truly difficult times. Basically, the last decade has largely been focused on achieving financial independence. I'd never been a very business-oriented person until I met my husband. He's extremely entrepreneurial, and his passion for it is catching. We've run our own businesses together and separately throughout our marriage. The goal has always been to make enough money on location-independent businesses that we can live freely. Not necessarily retire, but to have more freedom. Because of his encouragement, I'm now on a career path that could easily result in that. In 10 years, we've moved 25 times. To be clear, that's about 2.5 times per year, or once every 4 or 5 months. All because better opportunities have presented themselves or current opportunities have dried up. We're now facing move number 26, with move number 27 not far away, because move number 26 doesn't look like that good of a prospect. Without giving away details, my business fluctuates greatly. I've had months where I pull in mid-5 figures, and long stretches of a few hundred. As a quick aside here, OP isn't clear if she means a few $100s per month or a few $100,000 per month. I think she means a few $100s per month. My career outside of this is food service with a very definite wage ceiling. My husband's career is professional, and he can easily find a 6-figure salary position. His current online business brings in the low 4 figures. We've always relied on his going back to work when money runs low. He's in high demand. He can practically snap his fingers and get a job. I cannot. Here's the conflict. My husband is completely burned out. He physically and emotionally can't deal with the stress of going to work right now. He supported me through the last couple of years when my income's been low. I've always been aware of my financial contribution and make up for it by carrying the grand majority of the household chores. Even when I was working 60+ hours as a manager and pulling in half his wage. But as our savings dwindle, it's looking more and more like I'll have to get a job. That means pushing my business to the back burner, working a physically demanding job, all for a quarter of the pay that he could get. I'm not one to spend money. We didn't have a wedding. We bought my wedding band 3 years after we got married. I cut my own hair. I work from home in sweatpants. It's not as though I forced him to work jobs he hates in order to provide me with an extravagant lifestyle. I've worked terrible jobs to help provide for us in the past. And even when my business isn't earning a ton, I still put in 50 hours a week. I crave stability. Not permanence, just the feeling that I can unpack our boxes and not feel like I should save them in a closet knowing in 6 to 9 months I'll need them again. We've been child-free for years, but the last couple of years the topic has been coming up more and more. Yet I feel it's impossible to even discuss the idea of starting a family in the face of such uncertainty. I miss my cats, who are living with my parents overseas. I want a fish tank and a place to hang pictures. He says, "If you want those things, then make them happen." Which, fair enough. I completely agree with that. I don't want to rely on him to provide the life I want. However, it leaves me feeling a combination of emotions that I can't really put a word to. I find myself going through mental exercises of, what would I do in this situation if I were single? How would I support myself? And I start to feel resentful. I'm not single, I'm married. And not only that, I'm not sure I can make enough money to support us. I desperately want him to find what it is he's meant to do. I don't care about the money or the dreams of financial independence if it means he's miserable trying to get there. He's been trying to work out which direction to change to for the past year, and he hasn't come up with anything solid. I know it's all about give and take, but I can't help but feel, I don't have the words. I'm at a complete loss as to how to resolve this. Then, 10 months later, OP posted an update. I don't care about keeping things anonymous anymore. I'm an author. I self-published books and made a decent living doing it for several years. My husband is a software developer and mainly buys existing online companies and fixes them up to sell. When that's not working, he tries to work a normal 9 to 5, but typically lasts no more than 6 months. His last job lasted 1 day. My career before this was in the food industry, which means bad pay, long hours, and very sore feet. I found a job that pays 95% of the bills. The rest is covered by savings. Yeah, I'd rather be working for myself, but I like it. I'm good at it. It's the first time I actually enjoy going to work. For the last few months, I've been slowly changing, and it feels like my husband and I are drifting apart. I am making enough money to support us, and it feels good. It's given me confidence in a way that I haven't had before, but it's also made something glaringly obvious in our relationship. We disagree on just about everything, and we have very little in common. I'm happy to work on my writing on the side while I work. He thinks I've given up on our dream and have settled for a world that he's loath to spend time in, as in the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday world. He sold his business and is still figuring out what he wants to do next. I want to buy a flat in the city. He wants to move to the country or use our savings to travel or live remotely. I want to settle for a while and make friends. He thinks there's plenty of time for that in the future. I want to make our home cozy and put up decorations like photos and artwork. While he likes that, he thinks of all of it as just pointless stuff that we shouldn't waste money on. I could go on, but you get it. It feels like literally everything I like, he hates. I've also realized that most of the moves, most of the big decisions were things that I just went along with. I'm not saying he bullied me or anything, just that I didn't feel too strongly one way or the other, so I tended to go with what he wanted. Of course we talked about it, but it was rarely me pulling in the bulk of the income, so I didn't feel like I had much of a say. Now I feel strongly about a life direction, and I have the ability to make it happen, and I feel guilty? He says I've changed, that he's the same he's been, that he wants the same thing he's always wanted. This is me altering the situation, which I agree with. But it's not like it's this massive bait and switch plan. He goes to work for a little while so I can have a semi-stable home. I bounce around the world with him so that he can discover himself and his career. But our tolerance for these periods have become too short to manage. He physically can't work for another person. I want to scream when I think about packing up my stuff and starting over again. Have we just spent so much of our marriage being distracted by the exciting newness of moving and pushing for financial independence that we didn't notice how little we have in common otherwise? I can't help but feel like this is on me. Not my fault per se, but on my shoulders. Then, 6.5 years later, OP posted an update. With the help of those posts and a lot of long nights of thinking, I left my husband. In fact, it took him going away for a long weekend to realize how much happier and at peace I felt without him around. At first, the split was amicable. But looking back, I think he was just waiting for me to come rushing back to him once I realized my mistake. When that didn't happen, and he could see that I was actually serious about building a new life for himself, a switch flipped. We only spoke when he needed something from me, and eventually that stopped too. Enough about him. I'm now 42, happier, healthier, and more satisfied than I've been my whole life. I picked me, and that was the best choice I could have ever made. I lived alone for the first time, and my God, the peace of having my own space. Unrivaled. I ended up staying in the apartment for 5 years. Not a moving box in sight. I put art on the walls, I knew my neighbors, I made a home. I grew my career and went back to school. Made friends, built a little community. Too long, didn't read. Left my husband, happier than ever. So a lot of the comments are talking about how OP's husband is a bad husband, but the thing that really sticks out to me is how of a spectacularly bad businessman this guy is. I mean, on the one hand, if the guy really wants financial independence, then he already has a path for that, software development. But hey, he hates the job, which is fine. He wants to be an entrepreneur. I understand that. The thing is, he's not a good entrepreneur. He sucks. He's been bouncing around from job to job for a decade, and they have no savings. They've started 27 businesses or something, and they still have no savings. Dude, you suck at this. I don't think he's really into financial independence. I think he just likes to think of himself as the boss, and he doesn't have any patience or like stick-to-itiveness. So as soon as a business fails, he's like, oh, well, moving on to the next one. Then he gets to call himself a big bad boss or something. Yeah, down in the comments, Why Not Father says what I was thinking. The guy sounds terrible. One of those, everyone I meet is a butthole type of guys, when it turns out he's the butthole. Good riddance. Also, the guy's 40 and he still hasn't figured out who he is. I can sort of see this lifestyle when you're like 20 to 25, but the dude is pushing 40. Give me a break. That was r/best of Redditor updates. And if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.